I'm Jim Cummings, Chairman of the TIRZ Board, and I'm calling our meeting to order. And I believe we do have a quorum, so we're legal. First, I'll ask for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If you feel so inspired to make a comment on any subject, well, this is your opportunity. Okay. Seeing and hearing none, then we'll move to item number 3 on the agenda. We're going to approve the minutes from the January 11th, 2022 meeting and then the January 25th, 2022. The January 11th meeting, we asked for an expanded version of it and comments, so I was not here at that meeting, so I'm not allowed to vote on those minutes, but I will entertain a motion. And I don't know, John, since I wasn't here to attend that meeting, I don't know that we can approve those minutes.
I believe, maybe Holly can help me, I believe it just takes a majority of those voting. So it's a quorum for the meeting is 5,
well,
but it would only take, I guess, 3 to approve the minutes. Is that sound right?
That's my understanding as well, yeah.
okay, we'll rely on council then, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the January 11th, 2022 meeting.
I didn't bring those back, but,
Okay.
I know there was a question when we were here last month about those, about they include the zone change, the change we had to those.
Yes, the expanded version. If you're a speed reader, I'll let you look at
There was
it.
a question on the, notice because of the.
He's got it.
Oh, he's bringing you a copy.
And while he's looking at that, if everybody could just make sure your mic is pulled close to you when you talk,
Yeah.
just to make sure we can pick it up on the recording.
On under 4, looks like about the last thing, the property tax abatement, I know we had approved that with leaving that property tax abatement in there. On the amendments to the incentive policies.
Yes,
Yeah, we could be more specific on that. We did say down with the motion was to recommend approval as recommended by staff, but with amendments made per the direction of the board. We could go back and reword that to be specific about what those amendments were. If that's...
When we approved those changes, we left that abatement in there.
That's correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure we have
And that's been reflected in the revised policy
Okay,
that will go to
Greg,
council.
that meets your approval?
that. Yes.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion then to approve the minutes of the January 11th meeting. Do we have a
So
motion?
moved. With that change, yeah.
Okay, Greg makes a motion. Jason seconds. Any other comments on the January 11th minutes? And I will not be voting as I was not present. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll move to the January 25th minutes. You have those in hand. And I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes. I hear a motion. Jason makes a motion. Second, anyone?
No, second.
Thank you. Any other comments about the January 25th minutes? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, all those minutes are approved. All right, the financial report. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. I'll be quick about the financial report. It has not changed since last month. There have been no expenditures out of the fund or no revenues coming into the fund, so the numbers are exactly the same as the report last time for both the south and the north.
Okay.
And so, let me clarify this a little bit. It shows available for assignment in the south, 255,000. That's not entirely true because, as you know, you all recommended funding 3 projects at your last meeting. That has gone on to City Council and they approved it. It doesn't show up here because accounting-wise, it just hasn't come out yet. That the processing of that has been submitted and will show up on your next report. So we can talk when we get to the incentives, how much is
Okay.
actually available.
All right.
Well, and I'll go ahead and just mention that now. It's about $143,897 is what's left from what you had approved last time.
Okay. So we have about 110,000 remaining.
No, I'm sorry, 143,000.
143 granted, so it leaves us, when you subtract that out.
No, I'm sorry, 143 is what's left
What's
after
left.
subtracting what you approved last time, which was
Okay.
about a 111.
Okay. Do we have a motion do you have any questions? Anyone have questions on the finance report? All right, let's entertain a motion to approve the financial report. Jason, good. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tony. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, financial report is approved. Okay, item number 5. Discussion and action, possible action regarding the first incentive award cycle, and this is a carryover from our last meeting.
So I think first we'll start with the north. It's at least somewhat simpler. As you recall from last time, 1212 and 1218 North Chadburn has asked for facade improvements, paving and landscaping, both to the tune of $75,000 each. You all had tabled this, asking for more information on the paving itself, whether that should be concrete or asphalt. They had proposed concrete, and the question was, would asphalt be cheaper and be more cost-effective? The applicant has not come back to us with any information, and so they may be here to answer that question. But as last time, our recommendation is to proceed with the request as they've requested. But again, if your recommendation is to reduce that funding amount by whatever the difference is between concrete and asphalt, that is your prerogative. So before we move on to the south, I guess we can open this up for public input to hear from the applicant,
Okay?
unless you have questions for me first.
I have a question from the applicant on the payment.
Sure. Ms. Lucky?
Okay, I'm on here on behalf of Oliver Brown. I did put the application together. He did, weigh the difference between concrete and asphalt. I think we've done a TIRZ funding before with 2311 Chadburn, and we actually completed that successfully. When, just weighing the differences, there really wasn't much of a price difference enough for us to get 2 contractors out, especially with as much concrete as we're going to need, just because we're completely tearing down both buildings and doing a whole new foundation. We're going to have some pretty large driveways as well. Per city guidelines, there has to be 2 car length driveways in front of each garage door. There's a large majority of it has to be concrete anyways. I can guarantee the way that all of our budgets and things like that, if it really was going to be cheaper, he would definitely choose it. And then as far as just upkeep that goes with like the asphalt, things like that, repaving it, especially since we live in Texas, and asphalt is just a lot more upkeep. So I think long-term, he just felt like that would be a better option.
What is the cost difference between asphalt and concrete?
I don't have the numbers on me, I apologize. I do some work for Oliver, but I don't work directly for him, and I was gonna stop by on the way here, but I wasn't gonna have enough time to grab that paperwork. But, I mean, I know when he evaluates these type of things, he's definitely about saving money. So I feel like if that would have made a huge difference, he would have gone that route.
Now, I understand your position on concrete, and I would be in the same position if I were in your shoes. But I am philosophically opposed on private property of putting concrete in. If we want to make it public and it's a public street, you betcha, concrete's the way to go. But on private property, that's a cost difference the city's doing that we don't have to make. And I'm opposed to concrete on private property.
Well, last time I talked to Oliver Brown, he did tell me
I'm
that.
sorry, Jason, can you pull
I'm
your
sorry.
mic a little closer?
Last week when I talked to Oliver Brown about his project, and correct me if I'm wrong, he told me that asphalt was a little bit higher than concrete. I'm not sure on that.
Yes.
He told me
He had
that.
spoke with, there's a pretty big asphalt contractor that works out of, I think, I want to say Midland area, and he was doing the Sitel parking lot. And so he was in town, and he got to talk to him, and for tearing out and putting in concrete, it would have been two different prices for him to tear out what's there and then the asphalt, I apologize. So it would have been it would definitely be more is what he said.
And that concrete work, it's gonna bleed into that, work that TxDOT did with those sidewalks. Is that correct?
Oh, then the front,
Yes.
yes.
So the city, or John, is it TxDOT that did all that side work projects along Chadburn?
No, that was actually TIRZ funded.
TIRZ funding?
Through the city.
So we already did all that sidewalk, so it's gonna bleed
It's
in.
on public property too.
Yes, I understand that.
I just want to emphasize the point that she made that the city already requires the driveway approaches to be concrete, so that'll have to be concrete regardless. And then I don't know what you call it, the area right in front of the bay doors would also have to be concrete. And so I think staff believes that that's irrelevant, that coming out with a second contractor, there are mobilization fees and costs associated with bringing out a second contractor that very likely could offset the savings you might get from asphalt, if there are any savings.
Is there any parking area that would be concrete?
On this project, is that what you're asking?
Yes,
My understanding is the whole thing would be concrete.
including the parking area.
Yes.
That's correct.
And that's what we utilized when we did 2311 Chadburn, we utilized concrete on that as well.
Whatever the city requires to be concrete, then that's a given. But as far as the rest of it, I'm personally not gonna vote for concrete on a parking lot that's not public property.
I think we can all definitely agree that those two buildings are probably the worst looking buildings in North Chadburn. So, we're definitely, personally me knowing Oliver for 15 years or so, I can tell you that if he could save money, he would. He is the kind of person that would go the cheapest route. So, I strongly believe that if he's moving forward with his recommendation, this is going to be the best route for him. That's what I'm saying.
So, Mr. Brown, if she's saying that concrete's gonna be the cheaper route to go with asphalt, are you
Yeah.
saying you still want us to go with asphalt even though it's more expensive?
I don't.
And then the long-term expenses as well.
I don't think concrete is gonna be less expensive than asphalt.
And I'm sorry to keep sounding like a broken record, but if you could pull that mic a little closer so we could make sure we pick it up.
I don't think concrete is gonna be less expensive than asphalt. It's never been my history that it has been. You're talking about 6 inches of caliche base with 2 inches of hot mix on top.
And I might suggest, I don't know the feeling of the whole board, but your two options would be to take a vote on this today, or you could deny it, or you could table it one more
I
time.
think it's a good project, I just don't like the private parking lot being that concrete. I think it's a great project, both of them.
Okay, well, let's keep this thing moving. We've got a long discussion coming up. So who's driving this motion? Are we ready for?
Anyone can make a motion you could make a motion to approve it to see if there's
Okay.
support for that, or you could table it to ask them to bring back an actual cost estimate for both asphalt and concrete.
Somebody,
Okay, let
Can
me
you do
ask
that?
you. Okay. Jason, you have a question?
Ms. Lucky, can you get those papers with the price differentials with
I
asphalt and
definitely
concrete?
could. I know last time when he did speak with, a guy that does the asphalt, I think he just got like a verbal quote, and when he did the numbers, it just wasn't worth it. But I mean, we can get like a physical quote if you need us to, but I know the verbal quote that he got wasn't.
Okay, so the way it's being presented is we're dealing with concrete, right?
That's
Okay.
their request, yes.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve this request then, as presented? Tony, we have a second?
I second.
Jason seconds. Okay, all in favor of this application as presented, say aye. Aye. Okay, all opposed? So it's 4-1, so the motion passes.
And before we move on, I'll just make one note. This will come up on a south project as well. Our policy does require that any property zoned CGCH, which is general commercial, heavy commercial, is required to be rezoned. By TIRZ policy, any fees for that are waived, but the applicant will have to, during the process, it's not required now, but during the process before they get their final payment, will have to rezone the property.
there won't be any permit requirement, fee requirement, will there?
No, those fees are specifically
Fees are
waived for
waived,
that.
so
That's
on
correct.
zoning, good, okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, what's next? I'm sorry to keep moving this along so fast,
No,
but we'll
that's
be
good.
here all night if we don't
Yeah.
keep going.
So now we have the south projects, and I'll note that this is a little different from what you were sent out because we got new information on one of the projects. But as you requested, we sort of ranked the projects. We didn't rank them individually, but we broke them into groupings or tiers. I hate to say that because that'll confuse people with the TIRZ board. But you can see there in the column towards the right, the tier numbers. So the ones that we ranked in the top grouping, number 1, then 2, 3, 4, and 5. And based on a lot of the discussion last time, we prioritized projects that were facade improvements, as well as those that had DHRC approval already. You may recall at the time, some of these projects, in fact, all of them did not have DHRC approval, but they had applied and were awaiting the DHRC meeting, which was last week. And so all of those that required DHRC approval now have that. And so that first grouping of, it's actually 4 projects, but you see there we've listed it as 5 because on the south, 416 South Oaks, we split that into 2 pieces. The piece that was facade improvements, which did require DHRC approval, and then the second piece was those that did not require DHRC approval. But it does come to you as one project.
Okay.
Just in our analysis, we split those out. The projects there in tiers 2 and 3 are mostly or included fire sprinkler systems. And based on the discussion last time, we weighted more highly the facade improvements over the fire sprinkler. And so all of the projects we're recommending funding, which are those first 5 listed there, are those that are facade improvements. And then as you move down the list, for a variety of reasons, those projects were ranked lower on the list. And so a couple of points about that and how this differs from what we had sent you last week. The 416 South Oaks, the name of that building is Concho Christmas Warehouse. Our understanding was that the use of that building was for Concho Christmas, which is a nonprofit organization. That's in fact not true. It is a for-profit building, and the planned use of it is for is not for a nonprofit. And so we had to go back and reevaluate given that new information. And based on that, it did rise to the top because it was a facade improvement along with sidewalk and landscaping, and it did get the DHRC approval last week. So
You're talking about both of those on 460?
yeah, both of those are recommended for funding. You'll see there, I won't go through all of the numbers, but as consistent with the three projects in the south you approved previously, where since we didn't have enough funding to fund everything, you funded those three projects 75% across the board of 75% of what they had asked for. So we kept that same 75% recommendation. And so you'll see if we fund those top 5 projects that are listed as Tier 1 at 75% funding, then that leaves, or that totals
Yeah.
139,000, leaving about 4,000. So it almost wipes out the amount of available funding for those highest priority projects. Had we had more money, we could have maybe gone down the list more, but we feel like that is a solid recommendation where we funded the facade improvements, but did not get into the fire sprinklers, because then it becomes an issue of, do you fund this fire sprinkler but not that one? And those are expensive, and there just weren't enough funds available to recommend funding those as well. That's kind of an overview of these projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the staff recommendation.
I have some questions on Tuick Street, the first one on the top of the list.
Yep.
You've got, the applicant shows that his demolition is 61,000 and his painting is 61,000 and demolition is like 30-something thousand.
The 35, that's his match, that's correct. And so,
Is
again,
the applicant here?
No.
And then he shows in his application, he doesn't give any detail of what the breakdown of the demolition is, the breakdown of the painting. And the painting, he says he's gonna do himself. The C2H3 is doing the painting. They're paying themselves?
well, we do require at the end of the project that they show paid invoices for all of the work that's done. And we have had projects that have come in under budget, and so we pay what they spent, not what they were approved. So if the 61,000, if it comes in cheaper than that, we would only pay them what they actually
It's
expended.
not gonna come in cheaper than that. That's what he put down if he's painting it.
That's a different question. I don't know that that's come up in the past. If they do the work themselves, can they be paid out of TIRZ funds?
What is gonna be demolished in that 35,000? What part of the building? You could take down the whole building for $30,000.
And that's probably a question for the applicant. Unfortunately, they're
He's
not
showing his
here.
application, he's gonna spend $600,000 on his building. Is it gonna be occupied? By whom and by what?
And I don't recall the specifics of that one. It may be in their application.
I spoke with Mr. Castillo earlier. He does have a work commitment that's preventing him from being at this meeting today, but he is planning to occupy this for retail space, restaurant and bar type areas, what he is looking. So this would be converting vacant space to occupied space that will generate sales tax.
And you're basing the match on the demolition or the painting?
No, it says eligible match.
Yes, the painting and other facade improvements is the requested funding, and the demolition is the match that he's requesting.
But you, John, you said you will have documentation on that 35,000?
Yes, before we pay it. Now, as you mentioned, the painting company is the applicant. That's the C3H2. And that's something we would just have to research. I don't know that we've had a situation where the applicant themselves were the contractor on the project. So as we move forward, if you approve it, we would just have to do some research on
Of course,
that.
on that demolition, all that work, we inspect that, do we not?
We do.
So, we can tell what,
We have had cases in the past where applicants are the actual contractor that'll serve on the project. We require documentation showing proof that, you know, what you're saying, you know, like if you have the cost of paint, you need to show us receipts. What did the paint cost you? Making sure that they're not marking up in an inconsistent manner. And then we do require completed photos of the work, verifying that they fulfilled the terms of the agreement.
But if you are basing the match on the 61.5, is that correct?
Well, yes, the 61.5 is what they're
And then
asking
you
for,
take-
and
and
the
you take-
35 is the match.
And you take, the eligible match portion would be $15,000, and the funding should be 34.5, shouldn't it?
Well, the total cost is the 61 plus the 35.
Yeah.
So it's the 96.5 would be the total cost of the project. They're requesting funding for 61 with 35 match.
With
But-
35.
Yeah,
But we're recommending funding projects at 75% across the board. So we're only recommending funding 75% of the 61.5.
61.5, this would get you 46.
For 46.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments on any other projects? All right, do you need a motion to approve all of these in as a,
You probably would want to open it up for a public comment on
Public
this
comment?
first, but
All right.
then, yeah, motion.
all right, do we have public comment on these projects? Yes, sir.
I'm Rob Zetzman. I'm Amy's father. This is Amy's project. I'm kind of helping her with it,
Okay.
if y'all remember. You know, she's not here. She had her baby today, so.
Well,
yeah,
congratulations.
Thank you. Everybody's doing fine.
Everybody doing all right?
Little girl, yeah.
Oh, good, great, congratulations.
So, I was here at the last meeting. I'm just looking at stuff, but, so the sprinkler system items will not be awarded anything according to this? Is that the way I'm reading this?
That's correct. That is the staff recommendation. And again, part of that was that there's not enough money to fund all the projects.
Right.
And based on the board's discussion at the last meeting, the prioritization was facades. And so we split this Etzman project into facade and non-facade and recommended funding the facade piece, but not the sprinkler piece.
Okay.
And last meeting, when we did talk to Ms. Etzman, I think she did agree that getting one was better than not getting one at all.
Well, that's true. She's just, currently the building's already been leased out, and there's a tenant preparing to move in, an open business, I think around the end of April. Of course, one of the stipulations to open is that the sprinklers have to all be done. And I just know she was counting on getting some of this, we thought, but the last meeting, I think there'd been approved like 18,000 or something on her project towards the sprinklers.
I don't recall the specifics, but yeah, the recommendation was slightly different last time. That's correct.
Okay. So there's no way to get anything allowed for her to get the sprinkler system redone at this time?
That's a decision for the board. This is simply the staff recommendation that you see on the screen.
Okay. I mean, the facade she's gonna get done too, along with another kind of longer-term project. She's gonna have lofts upstairs. It's gonna be mixed use. That's probably a couple years down the road. And the facade, she was possibly gonna wait on. The sprinkler, she really she's gotta get on that, obviously, to get the business open, so we can get it going. So there's no way to get maybe a part of her facade approved amount over to sprinklers, or is that possible to do that?
Well, it's possible if we have the funds, John, am I looking at this $4,600 down at the bottom? Is that what's remaining, or do we have?
That would be what would be remaining if you approve the staff recommendation. That's correct. So to fund any of the
How much money do
other,
you need?
Well, for the sprinklers, her estimate was right at 36,000.
How much?
36,000. And that was to redo all the sprinkler heads and put in a a fire alarm system, which is required. All this is, of course, required by the city. And it's part of the safety and health, that needs to be done.
What's your address of your property?
109 South Chadbourn.
Was that, man?
Yeah, it's under Zetzman Investments.
Last one.
Yes,
Yeah,
so instead of that
No,
The old press
facade,
building.
move it,
Oh, yeah.
It's a
could we move
two-story
it to the
building.
sprinkler instead?
That's it.
That's at the
The
discretion
the
of the
bottom
board.
is gonna be currently fixed to be a barcade area. Again, it's already been leased and they're already renovating. Upstairs will be, mixed-use lofts. That's probably a year or two down the road, though, before she can finish that project.
So, Mr. Setzman, would you rather use that money for the sprinkler system instead of facade? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if it's possible.
I'm okay with that. John just said it was up to the board.
I would point out that we've recommended not funding other sprinkler projects. But the difference here is that we are recommending funding for a portion of this project. So that could be a justification for shifting that funding. If
Why
that's
has the
the,
board in the past, Jim, not funded sprinkler projects?
I don't have an answer for that.
well, I can partly answer that. We have funded a number of sprinkler projects. It's just that often facades take precedence.
Precedent.
Take precedent.
Now, again, that's a discretionary decision by the board. You could fund all sprinklers and no facades if that was your direction, but based on past direction, this is the way we recommended based on y'all's past discussions.
Well, so of the amount recommended funding of 33,000 and some change for a facade, it'd be your preference to use 18 for the sprinkler and then 15 for the facade, and what would be left?
Yeah, that would be okay.
Well, if I recall, and I don't have much of a memory, I'm not sure I had lunch today or not, but I think I was trying to champion the sprinkler system at last meeting. I think I made a comment or two that I didn't want to wake up some night and hear that we had a fire and that we lost some life because we didn't have a sprinkler system.
Yep.
So I'm going to entertain a motion. And if someone wants to reallocate that 33,000 and do the 18 and then 15 on the facade, I would entertain that motion.
And let me, before you make that motion, point out, if you fund a portion of the project, they have to do the whole project. And so,
Yeah.
in other words, unless you specifically only fund a certain piece of it, so for example, if you fund a portion of that facade, they've got to do all
of it.
50-something
Yeah.
thousand of the project, or they don't get the money at the back end. So, I just want to make that clear. They can't get 15,000 for facade and just do 15,000 of the work. They have to do everything that they've applied for, unless you go line by line and specifically only fund certain things.
Mr. Zetzman, is Amy prepared to do that?
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. The facade, my understanding is it was probably a little bit further out, like a year or two out before all that was finished. Again, the immediate needs was to get it leasable, which is the fire system, the sprinklers and the fire system. And the facade, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. I don't know if she's prepared to do that with her.
So one,
The sprinkler's what gets you open?
Yes. Yep, we've got to have the sprinklers and the alarm system in place to. they've
so
gotta
one
be-
option would be to fund just the sprinkler and no facade.
And they can come back
We'd
later
have to
for the facade.
look at the numbers because you couldn't apply the whole 33,000 that we've recommended for the facade to the sprinkler because that's even more than they asked for. So
No, we could only do the 18 on the sprinkler.
you could do up to the 27, but consistent with the other approvals, we've only been funding 75% of what they asked for. So would probably be recommending 75% of the 27,544.
Okay,
I make a motion to approve that, 75% of just the sprinkler system. But I do want to make a point, Mr. Chairman.
yes, sir.
Whenever they do open a business, and if the city requires them to have a sprinkler system, it's not going to be on us. I mean, it's going to have to get done regardless.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if we didn't approve of the sprinkler system, they would have to find a way to get that sprinkler system there. I mean, that's just the way business works, and that's the way the city of San Angelo works. So, but I do understand that you're trying to get this business going, and
Yeah.
I think for this situation, we can just do the 75% of the sprinkler system.
So if you make that motion, what would we be funding? The $4,600?
Help me
No.
out, Jane.
No, it would be 75% of the 27.5. How much would that be?
That comes to 20,658. And that would leave that bottom line available number, instead of 4,600, it would go up by 12,900. So 17,000 and some change.
It's your preference.
I think that's what she would want to do. Yes,
Take care of the sprinkler system?
yes.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense to, if you're trying to get people in, to work on the facade, and because facade can be done in stages. Sprinkler system has to be done
It's got to be done.
100%
Right.
complete
That's correct.
before you can even open those doors.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so,
These people they're
Okay.
getting there. They'll be done middle of April, end of April, they want to open.
you'll be lucky then to get sprinkler system.
Well, I
Might be.
appreciate
That's a-
your,
that's a
I
stretch.
appreciate your comments, and tell your daughter we're just trying to accommodate her as best we can. So we have a motion.
So if I could clarify, is
Yes,
that
sir.
motion to approve with the staff recommendation, but with that change? Or were you just making a motion on this particular project?
I think on this, well, you can do it, you can include your change in the overall
It's fine
motion.
either way, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, with the staff recommendation at just the 17,000 that they're needing to get that sprinkler system going.
So not funding the Zetzman facade as recommended, but instead funding the
Funding the
sprinkler for
sprinkler
that same
system
project.
For 20,658,
75%.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's Jason's motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
20,658?
Yeah, and that'll
Yes.
cover the sprinkler system. That'll cover the sprinkler system.
That's just that.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Let it be written, let it be done. All right. Moving on down the agenda. Item number 6. Discussion of the possibility of funding south projects with north funds. And John, before you get into this, I want to make a comment or two. And somebody help me. I don't know how many years I've served on this board. Dudley, you can probably tell me. How many of years have I served on this board? 5, 6, 100? I don't know how many it is, 5 or 6 years, but let me say this to you. Folks, the most important asset that any of us have in this room is time. It's an asset that we spend every minute, and we never get it back. So the banker in me tells me that I'm always looking for a return on my investment. And for 5 years, 6 years now, I've been looking for an adequate return on our investment of time spent in this process. And I want to be honest with you. I am frustrated because of the fact that we've seen wonderful applications throughout these years of mostly young people wanting to invest all over our city. And I appreciate the grant request in the Northern Tiers, and I feel good about all the grants we've made up there, and I want us to continue to do what we can. But I am frustrated that we haven't been able to do more in this southern zone. And the reason we haven't been is we don't have any money. And, you know, I don't want to revisit the issues of how this thing was set up, north tiers versus southern tiers, and the big project up in the north that funded the tax increment and whatever, and I can appreciate that, but I'm at the point in my career on this board is that I want to see a return on our investment of time spent in this effort. And I don't know what it's going to take for those that are a lot smarter than I am to figure this out. And I know there's a lot of emotions involved when you start dealing with money, and people see that big amount that's allocated toward the northern tiers and whatever, but we got to figure this out, or we got to do something else. I want to take care of the northern tiers, but I am so frustrated when I see these young people come in here and, you know, asking for money for great projects. And they don't have to be young people, some older people. But we don't have any money. And it's frustrating, and I don't know why we keep spending our time debating it and staying frustrated and worried about it when there's nothing we can do about it. So, having said that, John, I'll turn it over to whoever else wants to make it. Yes.
You do, Jim, I'm going to echo that. I don't know why we can't combine the north and south funds into one fund.
I'm sure there's a legal issue there somewhere, but,
No, I think it can be done.
Okay, well,
yeah, and I'll just give a brief overview. There is one tax increment reinvestment zone. It's not two separate zones legally under state law, it's one zone.
Okay.
The city council, when it was established, or sometime thereafter, separated it into the north and the south.
Right.
And chose to segregate those funds. North funds would be used in the north, south funds would be used in the south. As we briefly discussed last time, the policies do specifically say that north funds can be used in the south and vice versa. It simply takes a supermajority vote of this board and a supermajority vote of council to approve funding of those projects. So we could fund south projects with north funds today. You all could recommend it by using north funds. It would take a supermajority, and then council would also have to approve it. This has come up for discussion a couple of times in the past, and as you mentioned, there were strong feelings on both sides. Ultimately, the city council decided to keep it the same as it is, allowing it with the supermajority. And so I guess we're looking for direction from you all, if you would like to suggest the city council change that policy. Another alternative would simply to start considering recommending to the council use of north funds for south projects, and see if they, would go along with that or not.
Ladies and gentlemen, there were different personalities involved when those policies were adopted. And times have changed, and the South is out of money. And the South is out of money largely because of the improvements that have been done downtown that took a large chunk of it. So why should we not have only one district and combine the funds? And that is my position, and it was my position when I got on this board. It doesn't make any sense anymore. It's not relevant anymore to have two separate zones.
Well, John, you know the makeup of the city council, and I think that we'll probably we could get to, when you say a supermajority, you're talking about?
I believe it's 3/4 of the members, so, or 3/4 of the members voting, so.
Yeah.
Today, it would probably be, how many we have? We have
got
6 people. It would take 5 of 6 votes to
Yeah.
approve that.
See, I think we could do that. But what is your take on the city council? I mean,
I'm not going to speculate
okay,
on
well,
what
but,
they
well,
would.
let me split it this way.
Sure.
What would you think would be more amenable to the staff and to the city council if we have a formula, like where we have $2 million and some change allocated to the north and 100 and whatever to the south here? If we said, all right, just going forward, and it's subject to change every time we meet, it'd be subject to change, I guess, and get the city council recommendation, but allocating 50/50, 50% of, combining the funds, the amount of money, and then just take 50%, we could considered for north grants,
Yeah,
and 50% considered for southern and the south
Right.
zone. And it'd always be subject to change. I mean, we could, if we see that we need more money here or there, but, you know, I want us to send something over to the city council where I feel like we've got a chance to get it approved. And again, I don't know all the city council members anymore, so I
think
don't
we're in
know.
a good position right now in that you all just recommended some policy changes that will be going to council next month. As part of that same agenda item, we could bring this discussion up for them. It might be helpful if there's a consensus of the board on a recommendation to them.
Our motion
I
and
think it'd be more
recommendation.
helpful if we had a motion and a,
Recommendation.
Absolutely.
and
I agree with everything you said, and one of the most frustrating things is I've been on this board 3 or 4 years is that we have these great projects, like you said, and we can't fund them.
Right.
And we have to tell people no, because we should be able to tell these yes. And if we go by what y'all started with today at 75%, if we approved everything on the list today, the ones that weren't the tier 2 through 5, before we made that one change, $250,293 would fund 75% of everything.
Everything on the sheet.
And so we've got 8 times that sitting in the north.
Right.
I would like to make a motion that we take that money and fund these other projects from the north today, as the first motion I'd like to make. I'd like to make that motion. We fund these other projects at 75% from the north TIRZ funds.
Well, until we get approval of the city council, I don't know that we can do
Understand
that.
I understand we have to get the city council approval, but I want to make that motion.
And I think this is okay, Holly, but we are technically moving back to the previous agenda item, which I think as the chair you can do, but we might just want to formally state that if you want to make a motion about funding those projects, we're actually jumping back to item 5, because now we're on this discussion of north and
Right,
south funds.
okay.
Well, we're discussing funding the south project with north funds.
No, sure, I think that's okay, unless our legal staff tells us differently, but, and you're right, you could make that motion today. We would forward that recommendation on to council. What we would probably do is put the projects you've already recommended funding, we would just move that on as normal.
Yes, sir.
This second motion, we would take to them as a separate item, so they could discuss them separately. And then probably,
first should come, if this board agrees, maybe hopefully a unanimous motion that we change the policy, that we combine the funds, and that they be evenly divided between the south and the north. And recommend that to the city council. And if you would allow me, Greg, that I would make that motion, if this board is so willing, that we recommend to the city council that the policy be changed to combine the funds, and that of the remaining monies be divided equally, 50% to the south and 50% to the north. And then if that passes and this board does recommend that, then Greg, your motion.
That was my second motion. That's fine.
Before we consider the motion, can we establish that we have a supermajority present? Is it a supermajority of the entire board or a supermajority of the members present?
It's of the members present, and just to backtrack, I don't mean to stop progress, but procedurally, it's probably better to make a motion to reconsider the previous agenda item, then go ahead and make your motion on this second one.
Why?
That'll make it cleaner and.
Why?
well, I think what she's saying, if Mr. Gaylor wants to actually go ahead and recommend funding some of the other projects we didn't fund on the previous item, we should probably handle that first, so that
Okay.
we're done with that previous
don't
item,
care.
then move back to this item. And you can then make that same motion.
Okay.
Is that fair?
We'll do-
Okay, all
Right.
right.
I'll second Greg's motion.
So, no, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but if I understood our legal staff, there should first be a motion to reconsider agenda item number 5, to go
Correct.
back to it.
Okay,
Okay?
and so we're gonna,
Clarify my motion. My motion is to fund, using the north funds, the balance of these projects at 75% that we did not have enough funds for the south, that were presented.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but first there needs to be a motion to reconsider agenda item number 5,
okay.
so that we can procedurally go back to that
Bring
item.
it back, go back to
All right.
item 5 and reconsider and fund the balance of these projects at 75%.
Well, let's hold that 75. You can make that motion second.
Just get us back to item
You mean go back-
5.
Just-
Go back to item 5?
Yeah, just get us
Just, yeah,
back
make
to
a
item
motion to
5.
go back to item 5 to
Make a motion
reconsider.
Go back to item 5.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Greg, now your second motion.
Now, my motion is to fund the rest of the remaining projects, is updated to 222 that we did not fund today, using south funds, with north funds at 75% of the eligible expenses requested.
I'll second that motion.
We have that motion seconded now.
And before you vote, I will point out that there are a couple of projects on there that will need DHRC approval that do not yet have it.
Right.
We don't typically recommend that, but you have in the past approved projects
Subject to-
conditioned upon them getting that
But it's
DHRC
subject
approval.
to.
Yeah,
That's
subject
correct.
to.
They're still subject to that.
Yeah,
That's
it's-
correct.
yeah.
Right,
All right.
I understand that.
Okay, I think we have a motion and a second to finish funding the remainder of these projects at 75%. And your total, Greg, was 250-something thousand? Was your?
It was 250, 293 before we made the change on 109
Oh, okay, all right.
South
Well,
Chevron. It's gonna be a little bit different.
Yeah, well, the staff, can y'all?
Yeah, we
plug
can
that
figure
in?
Yeah,
that,
straighten
that
it
part out, and I think I heard in the motion, but just to clarify, that is, the motion is to approve those with north funds.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's
I
correct.
didn't specify an amount, but just
No,
the balance.
that's correct, because we have to have the. All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Jason?
Mr. Gaylor, I was gonna ask you, so, since we're gonna approve all those projects, does that go back to Mr. Zetzman? So is that gonna include his facade now?
That's gonna include his facade.
That's
Okay.
correct. It's gonna get his deal done.
Okay.
Get your deal done.
Okay.
Then Greg's motion would supersede what we did previous on him. So he would be funded totally at the recommended procedure, recommended
No,
percentage.
he's still got his other approved, but he'll
Okay.
be able to do facade, but he's got 2 years, so he's got
Okay,
time.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I
Yeah,
got you.
good. So we got him taken care of. All right. So,
And I'm sorry, just to make
Should we
sure
ask
we have
for
on
comment?
the record, who made the second for
I
that?
did, I
second was
seconded
here,
it.
Okay.
okay.
Should we get any comment before we vote?
I'm waiting.
Okay, I just want to make one comment. I just want to make one comment. Don't spend your money until council approves it.
Well, I appreciate that comment, but that's a given.
That's a given.
Council has to
That's a
approve.
given.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, this will go to council. And
Yeah.
that motion that you just made, if approved, will then require a supermajority by the council as well.
But Dale, on everything we do, has to go to council before before the checkbook is taken.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Oh, we understand how.
Just remind everybody.
We understand how the system works. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Now, are you ready for my motion? My motion is to change the policy to combine the funds, the north and the south, and the future. The funds will be divided equally so that tax money that comes in from the bean counters that gives us the amount of money we have each year will be split evenly thereafter, 50-50, in the south and the north. So that figure is going to change every year. Money's going to come in.
Right.
But whatever comes in, it's going to be split 50-50 to the south and north.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I don't guess I'm allowed to second, am I?
Yeah, you're a full voting member, so you could say.
Okay, I second that motion. And let me say this, folks, we're not putting this in concrete.
No.
It's always subject to discussion and change. I mean, it's gonna be a moving number. And don't misread my comments. I don't wanna do anything to prejudice the northern tiers projects, nor to prejudice the southern tiers projects. I just want everyone accommodated within reason that we get these projects done. You know, what's good on North Chadbourn is good for South Chadbourn. What's ever done on South Chadbourn is good for North Chadbourn. I mean, that's the way the city ought to be. And it doesn't do us as a city any good if we're sitting here and looking at a $2 million figure and that we don't get applicants. We don't get enough applicants every time we meet to discuss granting money to spend much of that $2 million. And so it's not serving the purpose of edifying our city as a whole. So this is not something that's can't be changed in the future. I mean, but it's something that we need to revisit and discuss and send over to city council and see what we get. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand so we can get it counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 6. Any opposed? None. Folks, I can't, yes, sir.
John,
Microphone.
if you need some folks to show up city council, Jim, I'll volunteer Jim and I'll back him up.
I'll put on a tie. I'll put on a suit and a tie and white shirt. I appreciate all of you. We've needed to do this.
Mr. Pfluger's got a question.
Yes, sir.
Lee Pfluger, I've got the same problem you do, Jim. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, or lunch today. But I was reminded that I don't know if we ever had a vote on the staff recommendations. We had a vote on Amy's, but I don't know if there was ever a vote taken.
No, we did.
There
We
was a vote
included it.
taken?
Yeah, we wrapped it up in
Okay.
one motion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. Thank you. All right, folks, and again, thank all of you. I appreciate you. Let's move to item number, I guess, 7, Director's Report.
Yeah, the only thing I had is, I briefly mentioned it earlier, but your new policies will be going to the March, I think it's 15th, is that the right date? March 15th, City Council meeting. And so we will try to get these items, there's some processing involved, but we'll try to get all these items on that same agenda so we can kind of have it be all tiers for that meeting.
Just make sure you and there's staff here that can support some of those policies and elaborate on them, because
I'd like, when you rewrite that item for the city council agenda, would you send us a copy of it so we can see it?
Yes, we can do that.
Please?
For the north-south one? That
yes,
one?
sir.
On the policy?
Yeah. Oh, and the policy, yes, yes.
Is that your director's
I'm sorry,
report?
that's all I had. That's,
Okay,
sorry.
item number 8, possible future agenda items for the next meeting on March 22nd. All right,
Jim, I will be absent for that meeting.
okay, sir. Hopefully we can all, the rest of us be here. You know, I appreciate everyone working around their schedules and getting here for these meetings, and I understand when you have to be out, and I had to be out in January one time, so. All right, as I look on my agenda, I come to item number 9, it says adjournment, so I hereby adjourn this meeting. Thank all of you for attending.
I got just a question, John, for you. Any new movement on 4th Street?
Yes, well,
Just for information.
well, yes, I will be meeting with the Public Works. They're looking at moving forward with the design of that. We have not heard anything new from TxDOT regarding ownership of that land, but we are moving forward on the design of a project.
Master Attorney, can't the state just quit claim it to the city for right of way?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I'll be honest.
The issue was this, there was some dispute with the state and a private owner on who owns it. And last I heard from them, that had not been resolved yet. But as soon as the state either says they don't own it, or the state says we do own it, they've said they were willing to quit claim it over to us as soon as that property issue is resolved.
Okay, we're still adjourned.